Hello everyone and welcome to the 2020 Lincoln Corsair. This is the replacement to the MKC. As you probably know, Lincoln is killing off the MK names as they were quite confusing and hard to keep track of, and replacing them from names from their heritage. So what we have with us today is the new compact crossover that's going up against the likes of the BMW X3, Mercedes GLC, Acura RDX, for example, and this is a continuation of what we're seeing from Lincoln, a brand that's trying to build its own identity, even though this is a Ford Escape underneath. Now, there's a lot of things that I want to bring up in this video and discuss, but at the end, I'll place this car in my ranking system to see how it competes against other premium compact crossovers. So before I picked up this Lincoln Corsair, I spent a week with the Ford Escape, the 1.5 litre all-wheel drive model. And getting out of that car and then immediately into this one, me knowing cars, I know that this is a vehicle that's based heavily on the same platform as the Escape, but to anybody else that doesn't know, I really don't think there's going to be any telltale sign that this is a Ford Escape underneath. The interior is totally different. A lot of the core elements are Lincoln specific. You can certainly find some part shared pieces with Ford, like the buttons for your window switches and the door locks, that sort of a thing, but the interior layout is totally different. The material quality is a significant step up over the Ford Escape that I drove, and the looks outside, of course, have their own distinct personality. But what has really genuinely surprised me about this Lincoln and all of the new Lincoln models that are brand new models is that they are coming with their own identity. So first of all, the interior layout, we've got a vent that looks like it stretches all the way across the dashboard, but just in front of the passenger compartment it's a fake piece, much like Mazda's CX-30, and the way the center console is lifted up a little bit and all the climate controls slant at this angle on this floating portion. It all, I think, looks really good and works incredibly well. Another step up of Lincoln's is that they have been putting more effort into their material quality and just how things feel. So for example, when you twist the volume knob, that feels like a rich and expensive piece. That same thing doesn't apply over to the fan speed dial. Just doesn't have the same rigidity, unfortunately, but all of the buttons that are there, the interaction with the touchscreen, and the interesting layout of the steering wheel. And I'm going to talk about the elements of the steering wheel in a minute, because there are a fair few things that I want to discuss about this very specific part of the car. There's a few things that you can find in this Lincoln that you just can't in the Ford Escape. Some of those things are what you've come to spec from Lincoln, so they're perfect position seats that have 24-way adjustments and massaging features. This model that I have has the heated and ventilated seats up front, heated seats in the rear, the parking sensors front and rear, the upgraded Revel sound system, and then the 2.3 litre engine that I have under the hood. The Lincoln brand has impressed, I think, most journalists when it comes to how much they have been able to achieve when they went from simply badge engineering Fords to what they are today, trying to have their own personality and really improving upon their build quality and material fit and finish. It isn't quite German level yet, but I think it is getting dangerously close to something that we'd see in an Acura or a Lexus. I mean, you're still going to find the soft plastics that you would find in a Ford in a lot of places in this car, so along the dashboard and on top of the doors, but there's quite a lot of leather in here. The steering wheel's covered in leather where I rest my arms and the seats. And there is a little bit of piano black plastic just behind this odd floating engine start-stop button, and then everything covering your climate controls. I'm really not a fan of piano black plastic, but it isn't everywhere in this car. You'll see that in the door cards, this portion is this texturized, oh, that's exploding on me, is this texturized plastic giving that funny noise. It is reflective, but it isn't polished, and the same is down here in the center console. I don't think there is as much space up front and in the rear as there was in the Ford Escape, an element that I was really impressed by, but still more than enough that someone that's 6'4" like me doesn't feel at all cramped or out of place in a compact SUV. Same applies to the rear seats as well. A touch tighter, I think, than the Escape. My knees are pushing into the back of my seat, but you've still got plenty of great features back there. You can recline the seats backwards, drop them entirely from the side, and you can slide them on the same rail system as the Escape, whether you want to prioritize rear legroom or rear cargo capacity. The 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster has the same graphics package as any of the other modern Lincolns, so it's quite minimalist. As you accelerate and the revs climb, you'll see that whatever number you're approaching is highlighted very smoothly. It's kind of like a Jag in that way. And the heads-up display is one of my favorites amongst the car industry. Very bright, very clean, and appears to be a full color display. Adding on to the build quality of this Lincoln, these 24 adjustable way seats have been a little bit of a gimmick in the other cars. I've loved them because I've been able to find what is the most comfortable driving position for me quite reliably in every vehicle that I get in that has them. But in the Navigator, they were quite squeaky. A potential reason for that less squeakiness, I think, is that these seats don't have as much adjustment as what you would find in the Navigator. So you'll see that the headrests are manual. There is no electronic controls to adjust the height or the depth of them, and that the back of the seats, or where you rest your back, I should say, don't have two split portions. They are one piece. So maybe simplifying the system, having less touch points, I suppose, has made this system more refined. But with the different massaging functions, they don't appear to be anywhere near as loud as what they were in the previous iterations of Lincolns that I've tested out. There's a few other details I really like in this Lincoln, like how we have the Lincoln logo lit up over the section where you're hiding away your phone, perhaps, plugging it in. This sliding portion, you'll see the Lincoln logo appear over top with the ambient lighting. You use touch sensing to engage your reading lights. Let's finally round up what I think of the interior by talking about the steering wheel. It's going to be a little bit strange when you get into this car for the first time. Initially, I was confused by it because when it's off, nothing is highlighted. All of these options that you select are backlit, and some of them appear depending on what menu or sub-menu you're looking through on the digital instrument cluster, or if you've engaged climate, or if you've engaged cruise control, for example. So if I hit the cruise control button right here, you'll see that these two panels that were just black have now lit up. With this, it offers a really unique solution of getting information out of the way of the driver. It reminds me a lot of the Range Rover buttons, like what you see that was debuted in the Velar, and I think they're now carrying over into all of their other models. But because we have the physical toggle switches here, which are a lot like a Xbox controller, I find it more reliable to use than just the touch system that you'd find in the Velar. So I quite like it. Another element of the steering wheel that I thought was going to really bother me is the placement of the button for your voice command system. So if you've got your phone plugged in, it's going to be Siri or whatever smart assistant you have on your phone. You simply press it and it engages over on the screen. Just because of the placement, I thought whenever you hold your hand on the steering wheel like this, that whenever you'd make a turn, you'd accidentally press it, and Siri would constantly be asking you what you want to do and interrupting your music and so on. But it generally hasn't happened once, and I think it's just because the button needs quite a deep press to engage. Even when I lightly tap on it here, you can hear me somewhat engaging it now, the button hasn't been fully pressed down so Siri won't engage. I love that attention to detail. Moving on to the driving elements, well, the 2.3 litre engine is mated with an 8-speed automatic gearbox, and in this Corsair has all-wheel drive. The 2.3 litre makes 295 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. This engine is no longer available in the new Escape, but the 2 litre engine in the Corsair that sits underneath this 2.3 is, I believe, the exact same that's in the Escape, but with the Corsair you get another 5 pound-feet of torque. So in this car it's 250 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, but in the Escape it's 250 and 275 respectively. This Lincoln offers up the different driving modes that have their beautiful animations on the 12.3-inch screen. I really like that. Here you'll see I'm driving right now in deep conditions because we have got a dump of snow here in Canmore today. I'm probably going to do all my exterior filming on a different day just because, God, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it today. The conserve mode is your eco mode and does what you expect, kind of limits your throttle input to save on fuel, and the sport mode really fires up this engine. And apart from the steering getting a touch heavier, I don't notice anything more. In normal everyday driving, I think this is a pleasurable thing to drive. The steering isn't as firm as the Escapes, but it still has a good amount of driver connection, and I feel like when I do turn the wheel, something immediate is happening. Ride is good, but I would say the 20-inch wheels that I have on this model, even though they look fantastic, I think are a bit too big. When you go over any sharp crease, that is really transmitted into the cabin. I don't know if the 18-inch wheels would really benefit that. I haven't been able to try it, but out of just pure assumption, I think going with a smaller wheel and a larger tire sidewall will give you a more comfortable driving experience. So much like the Navigator, a car that I felt was the first real Lincoln to totally separate itself from its Ford counterpart, in that case the Expedition, the Corsair feels even more so. Although I know it is related to an Escape, I think many owners or many prospective buyers that will get into this car will feel and see the difference between this and its Ford cousin. I think Lincoln needs some celebration of how much they have been able to improve themselves, change their identity, because what they are today is nothing like what they were 5 years ago. So that wraps up all of my thoughts towards the Lincoln Corsair, and as I mentioned previously, I feel like this is the best example thus far that Lincoln has provided to us to make this car feel like it has its own identity, like it has its own position, and it does feel like a car that was purpose-built as its own thing, and I'm thoroughly impressed by it. The one that I've tested out today I don't think has the same value proposition that a lot of Lincolns have had in the past when it comes to their competitors, but this is a vehicle that I think you should consider owning if you're looking in this segment. Maybe the Lincoln name and the badge isn't as appealing as the BMW one, but today, more than ever, I think that the Lincoln brand is something that you should take time into looking into and even potentially owning yourself. So that's been everything from me. Thank you so much for taking the time to watching this video. Please like the video if you liked it and share it if you think other people will like it too. And if you wouldn't mind subscribing, that really helps out the channel and hopefully so I can get into more cars in 2020. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again here soon.